Proceedings. So it is my privilege to welcome you all to our afternoon sessions. Our first session for this afternoon is a panel discussion on Beyond BIARI Philippines 2018 funding opportunities. We have three distinguished guest speakers to talk about this and share to us how to get funding for our projects. Our first speaker is Maria Carin Alejandria Gonzalez from the University of Santo Tomas Research Center for Social Sciences and Education to talk about funding opportunities. Please give a round of applause.
Thank you, Sir Charles. So, when we were drafting the program, I was asked by our co-organizer, Pam Kahilig, to discuss funding opportunities because she said, I think she labeled me like the grant whisperer or something because she just can't figure out how I was winning several grants simultaneously. And so my hope today is not to sound like that I do win grants all the time. My hope is to share some grant opportunities for you to try to apply for, and at the same time some of the tricks that I did to possibly win these grants. So regarding some funding options, this one is the sexiest of them all, primarily because the government have decided to fund education for as big as 10 million pesos. Cannot convert to dollars, sorry. So just do your math. So 10 million pesos for a 2-year program. UST has won 2 of this year, but not on disaster. And I have been looking into collaboration. In fact, prior to coming here, I was speaking with Ron Ona's president about creating a collaboration between UST and Palawan State University about climate change resiliency among indigenous population. Because when I look into the CHED website, yes, I am obsessed with grants, I have to admit. This is what I do during downtime. I just Google for grants available. Because the life of a researcher depends on funds a lot. So if you don't have funds, then you cannot implement your research agenda. So when I looked into this, it's quite an easy process. Literally easy process. Why? Because all you have to do is be interagency. That's the thing here. You have to be interagency, and if you have a bigger university collaborating with a smaller university or an urban, I'm sorry, I'm going to use urban rural, right? But no, not really. If you're going to look into a city university, like a mega city university, collaborating with a, let's say, a state university, or even not a state university, but a private university in the provinces, it would have a lot more funding. Don't worry, I'm looking at the assayants, and they're looking like, this is Philippines, you know. Don't worry, there will be an assay later, and plus Adam will have the international context. So I highly suggest for this one, look at the platforms that they're covering. I've highlighted the second one. And some of you are already LGU, what do you call this? Some of you are already in the academe here. You could already collaborate if you have ideas that you would like to move forward. That's why this panel is called BIARI and Beyond, right? So if you have ideas as a group, all academics, even the LGUs, because if you would collaborate with NGO, that's another plus factor. If you would collaborate with LGU, in short, if it's going to be intersectoral, it will be highly high chances of winning the lottery. And I've checked the recent grants that been awarded by Grants in Aid. One of them would be to create a module. Inter-university module on climate change. So with it, all you have to do is go to this. So I've provided links. I've provided links for all the possible funding opportunities that I presented today, so that you could read on them, see what they're requesting or requiring from you. What is the minimum requirement for you to apply, apart from institution? The leader should have at least a master's degree. So that's the requirement here. If you don't have a master's degree, utilize a friend. So call on a friend and say, hey, I have a project. You want to be the project leader? But I will do the work. We just want to win it. I'm just kidding. Well, it could be done. Some of them would do that just to win the grant. But if you're gonna do that, please make sure that the person is also knowledgeable about the project. Because it's called cheating. Don't do that. So, all right. So that's Chad. There is this one. I've recently won an NRCP grant, and I think this one is easier to apply for than the grants in aid, primarily because they have so much funding right now. NRCP, or the National, I swear to God I'm a member of this, National Research Council of the Philippines, have recently gotten an award from DOST. So it's a separate funding from the Department of Science and Technology. They put some money in NRCP, and now NRCP has listed the priority areas of where they want to fund. Now, these are just the ones that I've included here, but there's so much of them that could be included. I just thought that we're here for the environment, so I put here the environment context. What I want with NRCP is actually tuberculosis. So, how do you win these things? You cannot apply if you're not an NRCP member. So it's a bit exclusive in its approach. But if you're an NRCP member, it's easy to be an NRCP member. Now I'm plugging for the organization. The NRCP is it's the country's biggest organization of scientists, natural scientists and social scientists. And if you have about 2 or 3 publications, and you can apply for what they call as associate membership. I forgot how much you pay for membership. I think 500 or 1,000. And then they will evaluate your application, and when you're okay, they see that your publications are legitimate, you did not publish yourself, then you will get to be part of it. May I know who are the NRCP members here apart from myself? Please be proud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Period? 4? And where are the other scientists? Sally, you don't want to be a member of this? I'm confused. You have to be a member of this. A lot of people don't even realize that they should be members of NRCP. I think at one point I was speaking with Ron Ona and asking him maybe he should join the NRCP because he has several publications already. So once you get to be a member here, you have access to a lot of things, publication and funding. So the recent one that I won with them is about tuberculosis. I'm going to discuss how I won that particular funding in a while. Alright, so NRCP, these are the points, and I think having gone through the groups, I've seen saw what kind of funding you would be needing. That's the reason why I'm presenting these types of funding. You would notice in the environment context, some of your proposals are already there. They would actually give you as small as $500,000 to as big as 10 million. But you have to run it again within maximum of 2 years. For me, I decided to do a 1-year study because, yeah, just 1 year. And this one is a recent call. They usually call every year. They usually release a call every year. This one is the most recent. They're calling again for the ADMATEL and EPDC Research Grants Program. Now you might say, how is this even related to environment? Because they're asking for submissions on technological development to even address disasters. So I remember that there were 2 groups here or so, or I don't know how many of you are doing some technological development for disaster. This could be a good funding opportunity for you. And yes, they will fund a whole lot higher than the 2 that I've discussed because, technology is expensive. My counterpart in one project, I think nanotechnology at one point, we were just being given 2 million because, social science, what do you guys do? But then the technological side, they were given like 20 million for one output. So this one will have more financial support because they're expecting you to produce an actual technology in the end. Again, the link will be here. Click on that and or find it, and you'll see more about how to apply. And this one is year-long open year long. So anytime you feel like submitting, you can submit to them. It is the OM Lopez Center. They have a maximum grant of 1 million. That's how much you can apply for, nothing more. So it's open every year. No, not every year. It's open the entire year. So whenever you feel, they don't have due dates for application. So whenever you feel like you want to, you're ready to submit a proposal, they will accommodate it. There are guidelines that they would like, but I've highlighted here some parts that when I spoke with their team, because I plan to apply for this, they said that one thing that's important is collaboration between the academia and the NGOs. Without that, they said it's going to be a weak, proposal. Why? They said they don't want us to gather data only. They want active results. Their staff told me, if you're just going to gather stories, then we can't fund that. You have to have a tangible output in the end. So this is that other funding. And this is for our ASEAN group. It's a collaborative engagement, ASEAN CSR network, and you might say, but it's CSR. Yep, because even if you are part of the academe or LGU, they would actually be very welcoming for proposals with interagency context. So if you're going to be an institution like academic institution applying for this, it would be highly advantageous for you to tie up with your LGU or NGO partners. And again, since it's ASEAN, it's limited to the Southeast Asian region. So it wouldn't allow people from South Asia or any other region of Asia to be accepted for this. So this is where you could collaborate with all our ASEAN fellows here. These are the grants that you could win from 3,000 Singaporean dollars. So right now I think we're 33 or 40 pesos per Singaporean dollar, right? So that's how much that is. What else? And the time frame. This is the one that's crucial here, 6 months. I don't know what you're gonna do with 6 months, but 6 months time frame will be given for you. All right. So this is the request of Pam. I was speaking with her last night. She said she wanted me to discuss a little bit of how I won the NRCP grant or the other DOST grants that I have. Honestly, I think it's just about your dedication to find grants, but then again, be very intelligent in trying to win the grants. So the first thing that I would usually do, for all the grants that I've won in my career, the first thing that I would do is anchor it in the National Development Plan. So this is where I'm obsessed with. Like, I read it all the time. I try to find what were the gaps that were mentioned in the National Development Plan. So for the tuberculosis, I saw a gap in tuberculosis, in tourism. At one point, I had a grant for that. I saw the gap in tourism. So we have to find the gap that is being mentioned in the National Development Plan. I've pasted here the National Development Plan, the updated one. Whatever your sector is, you try to find a gap, and once you find that gap, you identify your research agenda. So that's where you fit your research agenda. So what I found in the tuberculosis issue in our country is that even though we have the TB dots, and even though we have these policies for tuberculosis, there is not much policy related to pediatric tuberculosis. So having seen that and having seen the trend of growing tuberculosis incidences in our country, it's the #1 killer of our children. That's how I framed the proposal. And then, of course, you have to tag along your best friends, namely related literature, and try to say that, oh, but in this place in the world wherein pediatric tuberculosis was high, they resolved it by doing this. So you try to strengthen your argument by related literature. You cannot just keep on citing community-based stories. You have to, contrary to what is being proposed earlier, to put it, laymanized it, when you do the grants, you have to sound as scientific as you can. So posited as opposed to said is a very strong word, and you need to use those words. And so for is propose your objectives. Some of you are struggling with the objectives part, right? Some of you like, oh, we want to save the world kind of thing. You can't do that in the grants application. You have to really be strategic, and the objectives must be tangible. You cannot just say, oh, we want to educate people. How are you going to educate? For example, that's our concern in tuberculosis. We have to educate children about tuberculosis. How? We're going to create community relevant brochures and information education materials. So it must be highly tangible. You cannot just propose, the goodness of humanity, something like that. So on the fifth part, we have to identify counterpart funding. It's always important for this organization. So that's the reason why I'm always tagged with a university. In your case, you're all with an institution. University comes as a very strong marker for security for a lot of funding agencies. So the moment, I think at one point I was speaking with a grant body of the government, and I asked them, why would you rather have us, UST, and he said, why don't you engage with this other group? And they said, oh, because we want to trust, a bigger university on this. So does that mean that smaller universities should not apply? No, I think the bigger universities and the smaller universities should actually collaborate and then propose together. And that is something that DOST and the rest are very eager to fund. Finally, identify your team. It's very important to work with a team. For which case, and plugging, I'd like to highlight my team here of the social health research. We have Florence Navidad, who's your facilitator right there, and then Carol, Pablo, and then Jay somewhere. Jay. We are a team, and we usually go together in grants. And why? Because we already know what we could do and what we could provide. In the same way that with the BIARI group that we formed, that won the grant for BIARI seed grant back in 2015, we already knew who had the power to write, who were there for their credentials, and you have to be very smart in applying for the grants. So I'm gonna pass on the mic to the next speaker because I think those grants are also pretty much important. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So let's hear from an international perspective, and this person needs no further introduction. So let's welcome Mr. Adam Levine.
All right, thank you, everyone. So I've got a few challenges here. Number one, it's after lunch, so you're all sleepy. Number two, I'm competing with CNN, and that's difficult. And number three, I've got a really mixed audience. There are academics in the room, and I think all the academics have their pencils out and they're taking notes because they want grants. Everyone who's in academia needs grant funding for research. But we also have a lot of folks from LGUs, from NGOs, in the private sector in the room. And so I really want to make the case for why funding, grant funding, is important to all of you as well for research, why you should care, and as Carin so well spoke, why the importance of partnership and why you should all be partnering with each other in this room. So I actually have two quick presentations. The first is going to be, in general, how to apply for research grants, or just my own tips from my experience in writing grants. And then the second is going to be about one specific type of grant that I think you guys should know about. So, why apply for a research grant? So, what's the reason that you should apply for grant funding? Why not just do the research, do the project on your own? Resources. Good. What else?
Filling the gap in the community.
Filling gaps in the community, exactly. So, if you see something as an NGO or LGU that you wish you would know how to do this better, and you don't know how to do it well, applying for a research grant, working together with an academic institution to do the research can help answer that question. It's also something different, right? who wants to just be doing your job every single day. It's kind of interesting to do something a little bit different. And so that's another reason to think about getting involved. So a few reasons that I think are important is that all research costs money and time, either yours or someone else's. That's the reality of it. There's no such thing as free research, just like no such thing as free lunch. And so someone's going to have to pay for it, and it's probably better if you can make it happen that a grant funding agency whose job it is to pay for research pays for it, rather than yourself or rather than the community members that you're working with, because in the end somebody's going to pay for the research in their time or their money. I will also say that once you submit the application for the grant, you've already written your publication and your ethical review board proposal. It's all going to be the exact same thing as the grant that you submit. So writing that grant actually helps in terms of having that documentation that you can then just cut and paste later for your ethical review board proposal and for your final publication. It's also a good experience. It's going to improve your way of thinking. Going through the process will make you a better scientist, will make you a better sort of logical thinker when it comes to how to solve problems, and so you can learn a lot from it. And if you're an academic especially, even small grants look good on your CV. So even if the grant doesn't provide you with a lot of support, it looks good on your CV, and it is